The Russia-Ukraine war is entering a new phase of uncertainty. A dramatic escalation is unfolding on both sides of the border, this even as the American President-elect Donald Trump is setting up for talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Ukraine, on the other hand, has said that it expects high-level contacts with the new U.S. administration soon after Donald Trump takes charge of the office. Our next story tells you how as to the intensifying is being carried out across multiple war fronts, and are we now in a position where the two sides can in fact sit for negotiations? Take a look.
The war is intensifying. Russia and Ukraine are launching no-holds-barred attacks across multiple war fronts. Moscow accuses Ukraine of using US-supplied HIMARS missiles to strike a key square in Donetsk city. It claims Kyiv deliberately targeted civilian infrastructure that killed at least 3 people and left several injured.
It all happened in a split second. We led the people out to a safe location to cut a long story short. I've ushered some customers through the entrance for personnel and others lead to back rooms. All the customers and staff are safe and sound. Everything is okay.
Ukraine alleges Russia carried out relentless airstrikes overnight with 72 drones. While 5 Russian drones struck buildings in Chernihiv region, a downed drone fell on a building in the capital city, Kyiv. Russia claims Ukraine has suffered devastating losses, with military airport infrastructure, drone assembly and storage facilities and ammunition depots destroyed over the past 24 hours. US President-elect Donald Trump, who takes office in a week, has set a 100-day deadline to end the Ukraine war. He has openly expressed skepticism about US military and financial support for Kyiv. Trump has criticized President Joe Biden for failing to engage in direct talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin for over 2 years.
President Putin wants to meet. He's said that even publicly. And we have to get that war over with. That's a bloody mess. Soldiers are being killed by the millions. I looked at some very graphic pictures yesterday. The soldiers that are being killed, you know, it's a flat field. The only thing that stops a bullet is a body.
Russia says Putin is ready for talks with Trump with no prerequisites. Moscow has welcomed Trump's readiness to resolve problems through dialogue. But Trump's hopes for a swift end to conflict are stoking concern in Kyiv. Ukraine fears it will be forced to accept a peace deal on terms favorable to Moscow. President Zelensky is pushing Trump to back his peace through strength proposal. He's seeking NATO protections and concrete Western security guarantees as part of a potential settlement to end the brutal fighting. As the war completes 3 years, all eyes are on whether Trump can seal a ceasefire deal and fulfill his promise of ending the Ukraine conflict sooner than it otherwise would have. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're joined by Mr. Rafael S. Cohen, who's a senior political scientist at RAND, Director, Strategy and Doctrine Program. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Mr. Cohen, Donald Trump is to take charge of the White House in a few days from now. Under Joe Biden, the American strategy had been to back the Ukrainian war effort in its defense. But now Donald Trump has said that he is willing to sit down for talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's also indicated a similar sort of a predisposition for talks and negotiations. In your assessment, do you think negotiations can actually now happen, and who do you think wants these negotiations more?
Well, I mean, first off, thank you so much for having me on. I think it's going to depend a little bit. Both sides, both Zelensky and Vladimir Putin have at times talked about negotiations. The issue is that what both sides, but what Ukraine views as an acceptable outcome and what Russia views as an acceptable outcome simply do not overlap right now. Putin has said that he's open to negotiations without preconditions. When you push him on what he views as an acceptable outcome of the campaign, it involves the seizure of significant swaths of Ukrainian territory, up to 20% of the territory, of Ukraine's territory. It involves Ukraine basically disarming or being subservient to Moscow and not joining the NATO alliance. By contrast, if you talk to Ukrainians, what Ukraine views as an acceptable outcome is the restoration of Ukrainian territory, security guarantees, some sort of justice for Russian, and so there's not a whole lot of overlap there too. So we'll see whether or not President Trump can negotiate some sort of policy overlap.
Right. It's interesting that you've put out the very entrenched positions of Russia and Ukraine. But Donald Trump has said in the past that he can actually sit and within a day sort out this Ukrainian issue. However, General Kellogg, he's now come forth and said that probably this war can be sorted out in about a period of 100 days. What do you think would be a middle ground that would be acceptable both to Vladimir Putin and also for Donald Trump, who would not to be seen as surrendering to the Russian aggression in Ukraine?
So I think there's going to be a couple different options that have been discussed. Some have been European security guarantees, including European forces inside Ukraine. That's been one option that's been floated. Another option has been that Ukraine doesn't join NATO but joins the European Union. And there's been sort of other sort of formulations thereof. It's interesting that, the United States can propose these ideas. Ultimately, it's going to be on the side of the two combatants, Ukraine and Russia, on whether or not they're acceptable or not.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Mr. Rafael Cohen, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.